Good morning, good evening, and good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and welcome back to the Rebel, Reject, Create podcast. And my guest today is Joshua Baumgarten, poet, musician, and founder of the Irrational Library, all the way from Haarlem town in the Netherlands. Good afternoon, Joshua.
Hey, good to see you. Good to hear you. My mother would say, or my father would say, you got a great voice for radio, but
Yeah,
this is a podcast. So,
or a great
or what is
face
it?
for
No,
it.
sorry, I messed up the joke. You have a good face for radio.
Why, thank you,
You have a
I
good,
think.
but yeah. With that being said, you have a very good voice for this. That's cool, man.
Thanks. So, talking of being very good at things, you're a massively creative individual. You can't seem to help yourself. You're always getting up to all sorts of mischief. You were just telling me about a podcast you did during lockdown. You got a band. You released albums. You're a performance poet. You set yourself up as the city poet of Haarlem. You've had an entire shop with all sorts of crazy stuff in. My big question to you is why? Why is it so important?
Uh, let's let's aim for the fences right away, David. I have no idea why it's so important. It's just something that I think is intrinsic in myself.
Yeah,
Something I became poetry. Well, music has been something I was always interested in from my teenage years. Alternative music, be it whatever genre, fall in that broad spectrum of alternative music. And then start writing, and just the whole pursuit of creativity, artistry, a bit of that outsider lifestyle and viewpoint, pushing against the norm, and yeah, sort of embracing culture that is out there, from the lowbrow to the highbrow and everything that comes in between. I find really interesting for myself. So yeah, just to be participate in it is great. It is exciting and fulfilling, and then just the creative outlet of just sitting and down in front of my laptop or a notepad and just begin writing and see
yeah,
where it might come out, see what I might come up with, see what I have to say to my. Well, see, it's what I have to say to myself, and then
yeah.
project it out towards the outside world.
Right. I mean, pulling at the threads of that answer, I mean, it sounds like you're a pretty open-minded person, trying out so many different things. Not everyone feels inclined to do that.
I tend to get. I wouldn't say bored is the right word, because I think boredom is a good thing, because boredom may push you to what do you call it? Investigate other avenues.
Yeah,
And with the spoken word writing, and then it became this thing of like being interested in doing performing it, reading out loud, and then then becomes a label of spoken word, and then spoken word, then you start to discover other spoken word artists out there, and that then tracing that back to, say, for instance, Gil Scott Heron, and the
yeah,
beginning of what evolved into hip hop and rap music, and just the music. I'm not sure how you are with your writing, but I'm always writing on a beat, or there's an intrinsic
mm,
rhythm and a
yeah,
rhyme. I love the flow, the words falling on top of each other. And then when the opportunity came to do that with live musicians, and then to hear how that could play out, I was like, yeah, I dig this. I don't really like hearing myself reading when I'm solo recordings of it,
yeah.
or like I'll never listen to this because I can't stand my voice. But with the band, I'm like, wow, that sounds really cool. That guy's cool.
That guy's cool.
This other guy, well, not so much.
Interesting. Is it, I mean, do you feel like you are another guy when you're doing the band stuff as opposed to the poet stuff or just everyday Joshua?
No, I try not to.
Mm,
And the keyword is, I guess, try. I'm very conscious of putting myself out there as I would be every day.
mm,
In Harlem is a big town, small city. And I have luckily the opportunity via the shop, which you mentioned, and in the band and my current work. I know a broad cross section of people,
yeah,
and I don't want to come over as like, oh, you're the guy in the band, or you're the city so proclaimed city poet. I'm just me. And this is what I do. You
right.
do that, I do this. It's just, and then when I get on stage, yeah, I let myself go, and I can get a bit intense, but we're all, I know a lot of different poets and writers and painters and stuff, and you see the artist, and then you see the dude or the girl behind it, the woman behind it, and it's just a
Yeah.
person who's luckily enough to be in contact somewhere with how to be creative.
Right. Right. I mean, you've pointed out an interesting distinction there, and I think it's one that people who are not so creative or think that they're not so creative get quite stuck on the difference between the image, the myth, as it were, of the rock star or the international poet, and just a human being who's expressing a very human urge. Do you think that gets in the way of more people actually just expressing themselves?
It stops some people from taking the chance to be creative, while on the other side, it gives people this a feeling that just because they're creative, the people have to pay attention to it. It's like this
Ah,
weird dynamic. It's like when
right.
you have see amateur artwork and it's like €1,000, and you're like, why? Do you want people to buy it, or do you just want your ego to be stroked?
Mm,
What's happening there? And the cult of celebrity for people, rock stars, actors, that sort of thing, is really, I think, can really hamper people from doing creative work if they fall into that role. That again, if it comes with money and luxury and all these things that people always want until they get them, it's different. It's a different story.
yeah. You said
Um,
something quite interesting right at the beginning of that. You said that stops some people from feeling they can take a chance.
yeah,
I mean, that's an important phrasing, right? Because I think this is part of the whole deal, isn't it? It is a risk to do this.
it's a risk to put yourself out there because
Yeah.
being an artist or being creative is, if you, I, my opinion, if you're doing it right, you're doing it from your heart, and you're doing it because you really feel this need to do it, and you're kind of making yourself vulnerable to not only invest. To me, more important is investigating what you as a person want to say, want to create, want to show to yourself. What the rest of the world interprets is something else. And how the rest of the world, if you want to share it with the rest of the world, if you want feedback from the rest of the world, that's a whole nother step. That's just something that involves other things. For me, intrinsically, it's like I do what I do for myself.
Yep.
And as I became more and more of a performer, it became something to share. But at the same time, I try to curtail my interest in what the feedback is, though you're always looking for feedback. You know what I mean?
Yeah. It's a difficult one.
It's, it's like I was always, nowadays with a band, it's all about, or not all about, a lot of it is about how you market yourself on social media. Instagram, and there are countless people on Instagram who tell you how to do it right, how you're doing it wrong, and this and that, blah blah blah. And I get emails of people who are like, "Oh, we heard your song, and we know we can get you 30,000 followers in
Yeah.
no time by doing this, this, and this." I'm not interested in that.
Yeah.
I was never interested in sending my poems out to magazines and waiting 3 months for someone to reply, "Thank you, but no." So I made my own books. I made my own little fanzines. I eventually met people who did things on a much more small press, immediate base, where you didn't have to put it in someone else's hands for that feedback. Um, that was my choice, just because I enjoy the immediacy of creating it and moving on.
Right. 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 Would you say all of this creative practice that you've engaged in over the decades has made you better or worse at other more sort of like everyday stuff?
I think to a certain extent it frees me up from, because the way I handle my own creativity or what I do with the creativity, it frees me up from being caught up spending countless hours online trying to figure out how to sell myself on
Right.
social media,
Hmm.
or calling people to have them say, "No, we don't get it." I'm like, "Thanks, no problem, you don't get it, okay, that's cool, there's a
Yeah.
lot out there that I don't get." uh Moving on. But when I perform with the band, I perform as a poet. And to me, a poet is someone who reads their material, not on a phone, but out of a book, on a piece of paper, crumpled up. It's that connection to me with the words on the page. So I always have my text in front of me. And
Right.
what I just said is my way of rationalizing my laziness from trying to remember, spend hours remembering what I'm supposed to say because I got a lot to say and there are a lot of words and the words are in front of me and I still fuck it up half the time. But at the same point, I want to keep my mind. I don't want to spend too much time on that. Keep my mind open um, for other things. Daydreaming, for instance, listening to music, writing, reading, going to the gym. Just not too caught up in the whole parallel life that creativity takes on. Because I get it that people want to create. Yeah, it'd be lovely if people take notice and want to, invite. I've had opportunities to pass people invite you to come do stuff, read somewhere, and they'll give you a little bit of money, or they might give you a lot of bit of money, which is great.
Yeah.
But there's always the next day,
Hmm. That's an
and there's
interesting.
always
I
that.
mean, that's such an important perspective because that's exactly where it goes wrong, right?
I when I first started with the band and I had the shop and I was getting a little bit more attention, be it in the press or be it being asked to take part in things and be involved in things that were then all of a sudden on a larger scale than I was used to. It's exciting. It's great.
Yeah.
Feel good. Wow, people taking notice. I'm involved. But yeah, there's the next poem and there's like we as a band we had an opportunity to open up for the band Pussy Riot doing a sort of theater tour a few years ago in the Patronat in Haarlem. And after the show, there's a sold out thing, crowd of people around the merch table from Pussy Riot. The young woman there signing a book, and I'm standing there on a tiny little table with my little band stuff, and people just kind of pushing me out of the way. A woman tapped me on the shoulder and she said to me, "Hey, I just want to say thank you for making me dance and think at the same time."
That's
And I was
brilliant.
like, and I'll never forget that because that person saw and heard exactly what we're out there to do.
Yeah.
And then and I keep reminding myself about that when it seems like nobody's taking interest in anything, or you put out a new album and you don't market it properly on social media, and then nobody says anything about it. I go, okay, what's next? But I know that there are certain people out there, and I met them through doing small shows in small venues or wherever it was, where we may end up, that have had that same reaction to what we do. And I think, it is that cliche of if one person feels what we do is important, you know, but boiled down, there's a level of truth in that.
Yeah.
And that sometimes that's that bitter pill to swallow that, yeah, your audience may not be 100, 1,000, 1,000,000, but it might just be one or five or 10, but they're there to get with you with whatever you're doing.
Yeah. How important do you think this thing we call creativity is, especially at the moment in this like weird juncture of history that we find ourselves?
I think it's very important. Um, but I think it's taken on a whole nother level, especially with the debate over AI
Yeah.
and stuff that you can do online and people, with the phones, you can make your own films, you can do so much. And it's a level of creativity that I'm curious what the after effects may be. It's a lot. I think to a certain extent, it is quite different than picking up a pen and a piece of paper or a paintbrush and paints.
Mm.
What you're doing digitally. Though, the guy who does our design work for the last album's Trick, he does everything. Not everything, but majority of stuff is digital. But he's a wizard, and he comes up with so much creative stuff and so much play with color, and that it's just so, yeah, the computer work is something I don't really have much to do with. But I
Right.
think creativity. you know, it's a weird thing. What yeah, it's a broad cross section
It
of
is, isn't it?
what is creative and what is crap.
Well, yeah. I mean, well, aren't those two different questions? You know, it can be super creative, but the value perception can still be super low.
That could be said about my work to certain people
Yeah,
and other people's work that I might see and think, what is this?
yeah,
what why did someone spend the time to make this?
yeah,
And then yeah, only that person can answer that question.
yeah. I mean, look, I've been in the situation where I've encountered something that someone's created, and I don't like it. It's not my thing, but I can see the workmanship. I can appreciate what's gone into creating this thing, putting it together, and putting it out there. But that doesn't mean to say I like it.
For years when I did worked with the Patronat doing in Haarlem, it's a pop venue. You perform there, I
Yeah,
know. I did those library evenings, where I booked bands, and a lot of times I would just have the opportunity in the shop to meet creative people, people with a performance art or band or stuff, and I would be very interested in the person. And I would say, "Oh, you want to perform next month on one of the nights I organize?" And they'd be like, "Yeah, oh wow, great. We've never performed anywhere before, or it's just taking shape, or whatever." And I'd be like, "That's cool. Bring what you got." And they said, "Do you want to listen to it? Do you want to see something?" I was mostly like, "Nah, just do you."
yeah,
I had the luxury of being given a space to give over to other people, and I was like, you just go and do your thing. And then, sometimes I dug it, and other times I'd be standing there like, whoa, what's this? And then people would come up to me behind me and whisper in my ear, like, dude, this is great. Or, dude, this is awful. What is this? I'd be like, this is them. It's on the person on the stage to do what they want to do and convince the people in the audience to dig it or not, or
yeah,
just be present with that. And that's a lot of um that's why I don't go to see bands a lot anymore, because I get really thrown off by people with the phones and
right,
filming stuff, and
yeah,
people here in Holland talking during the shows. It became something I just couldn't tolerate anymore, because it really gets in the way of allowing yourself to give yourself over to the band performing
yeah,
and
yeah. You're
just
not
kind of
there really, are you? You're just kind of in this limbo space somewhere between your brain and your screen, and nowhere near the artist.
yeah. And visually for me is like I'm shorter than the majority of Dutch people, Dutch
Hmm.
guys, and you kind of end up watching a concert through some guy's telephone.
Yeah,
And I'm like, nah. I, I've seen a lot of, I've had the opportunity, luckily, to have seen a lot of concerts in my day. So now I sort of pick and choose the ones I want to go to a bit more, you know, uh, yeah.
a bit more strategically.
And that's my middle age gripe right there. Okay.
All right. So enough of middle-aged gripes. What about font of wisdom? If a young creative person comes up to you and says, "Joshua, you've done all this stuff. I'm really inspired. What is your best piece of advice to anybody wanting to dive into their creativity and make something of it in the world?"
Do the research, kind of. Um, I was before we did the podcast, got online together. It popped in my mind something was like, I remember when I was 16, 17, and I was just discovering punk rock, and I was living in the suburbs of New York City, in a town called Nanuet, and I used to go into New York City with a friend of mine, and he would show me all the record shops and the bookstores and where the posters and they really get the paraphernalia. Um, and I remember wanting to find a copy of the Sex Pistols film, the Great Rock and Roll Swindle.
Yeah.
And I remember me and my friends going all over downtown Manhattan, the village, east side to the west side, to all these video stores to try and find it. And I remember we never found it. But at this place would say that place has it, that place has it. And I mean, nowadays, you just go online and I can see the whole film right now.
Yeah.
And that's a great luxury. But at the same point, from what I really instilled with me, a lot of curiosity was doing the research, going out and trying to locate things. When I started reading Charles Bukowski, sure, I was very enthralled by the rough language and the talk of alcohol and women, but it was actually the poems that he would talk about other writers and other artists, how they lived, how they went crazy, how they created. That was like, oh, who's Arthur Rimbaud? Who's
Right.
Artaud? Who's Celine? Who's Dostoevsky? Who's John Fante? Who are these characters?
Yeah.
And then we'll go back to the bookstore and ask the local bookseller, do you have any of this stuff? Do you have any of that stuff? And he'd be like, I got here and this and that. And then I started my trip down, history, the Henry Miller introduced me to a guy, artist, writer named Kenneth Patchen, who's probably my favorite poet. Is a poet, and he did a lot of really beautiful drawings, artist. And if you just go by what you hear, learn in school or on, in the mainstream pop culture, you never come in contact with some of these characters throughout
Yeah.
history.
No, you won't.
So by doing the research, and I still do that. It was like, and bookshelf behind me, I got all these guys staring at me all day, going, "What are you doing with yourself?" you know,
That's
and I
awesome.
feel like I'm amongst a good amount of friends. You
Cool.
know,
Thanks, Joshua. I mean, that's a
yeah.
brilliant insight. And yeah, get to the bottom of it before you start. So, thank you so much for spending this time together with me to chat about your work. For anybody listening who's really enjoying what Joshua has to say, and you're thinking to yourself, well, I need to listen to some of this, all of his links to the websites and the streaming and the music and the poetry are in the show notes underneath this video. So go and check him out. So, Joshua, thanks very much for coming along on the show.
Thank you, David. It was a pleasure to be here. It was good to see you. Let me just fine tune that what you say about our links. They website out of date. Bandcamp and the evil Spotify, best place to hear the music.
All right.
But yeah, and online you can Google some stuff and you'll find interesting little tidbits and photos and whatnot. But so,
Perfect.
but
And to
don't
you,
don't hold me accountable for that sort of stuff.
and to you listening to this, I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Joshua Baumgarten. Don't forget, we've got plenty more episodes where that one come from. So hit that subscribe button, come back and check out the next one. Thanks very much for listening.